Hacksaw Ridge, it depicts a character by the name Doss Desmond. Now, Doss Desmond actually comes from real life, and that is that he portrays the first conscientious objector. If you don't know what that means, is that he rejected to kill anyone, to actually even pick up a gun in war. Last time I checked, the number one thing to bring into a battle is a gun. And by doing this, he actually won the Medal of Honor. He was so brave in doing that, that they awarded him with the highest honor in the military. And what he depicted was helplessness without a gun, yet he still was so brave. And the theme of power comes up in today's quotation, and that is grab her by... My dad's here, so I'm not going to say it. And I completely disagree with that. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest. Anybody who would agree with this, they might have some questionable views. But I interpret this quotation to mean that we want power. Men and women both alike are greedy. They want to be powerful. But I disagree with this. In fact, I think the exact opposite is needed. Understanding, love, and forgiveness. And we're going to see this through 3 different examples. First, we're going to look at Steve Wozniak. Second, we're going to look at Antonio Brown. And then finally, we're going to look at President Barack Obama. But first, let's look at the example of Steve Wozniak. Now, Steve Wozniak is known as the lesser of 2 Steves of the giant tech company Apple. Now, unlike Steve Jobs, he had a couple different ideas in mind. Steve Jobs, if you've ever read his autobiography, it talks a lot about how he wanted to be in control, how he wanted to be powerful. And he made some really awesome products. I mean, for all we know, the iCar might be coming out soon. But in doing this and having power, he scared away a lot of people. In fact, he was kicked out of his own company. Steve Wozniak, on the other hand, created a product that people wanted. He took a lower job at the company, but he still made a difference. And what we can learn from this story is that while Steve Wozniak didn't take on as much power, and he didn't create it like Steve Jobs, he still made an impact. Perhaps an even larger impact. But now let's go to the example of Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown is the wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which, no bias coming from me, but it's the best football team on, the face of the planet. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers are a very interesting team, and they're very heavy on their offense. Now, Antonio Brown, unfortunately, has been injured throughout last season, and during this time, he wasn't able to play. When he finally got his position back, the other wide receiver was better than he was at that moment. So instead of asking for power, instead of telling his coach that he wanted to play, that he deserved it, he stepped down. And because of that, the Pittsburgh Steelers had a wonderful season. But if he hadn't done that, if he had taken the power just like Donald Trump wants to take the power, then it could have had some really detrimental effects. But finally, we look to the last example, and that's of President Barack Obama, the first African-American president, and who has paved quite a path for diversity in America, especially in the seat of the president. I mean, the first African-American president, and now we have the first orange president. So that's pretty cool. We look at the example of President Barack Obama. We see that President Barack Obama had a campaign slogan, and that was, "Are you ready to go? Are you fired up?" And he continued this all 8 years of his presidency. But where that comes from is a woman named Edith Shiles. And President Obama was running for the president, and he went to a small town in South Carolina. He didn't want to be there. The people there wanting to listen to him honestly didn't want to be there that much. But there's a woman that walked into the room, and she said, "Are you ready to go?" And all the people in the audience said, "We're ready to go." And then she said, "Are you fired up?" And all the people in the audience said, "We're fired up." And from that moment, President Barack Obama took a campaign slogan that wasn't about power. It was about giving the ability to the people, allowing them to change the country, not worrying about him. Today we received the quotation, "Grab her by the pussy." I'm sorry. And we looked at 3 different examples. First, we saw that through Steve Wozniak, by not taking his power, instead stepping down, he was perhaps one of the best inventors of our time. Then we looked to Antonio Brown by stepping down. We saw how the Pittsburgh Steelers did a wonderful job in their season. And finally, we looked at the example of President Barack Obama. And through his campaign slogan, "Get fired up, are you ready to go?" he changed the entire nation. And once again, we return to the example of Doss Desmond, the first conscientious objector. He went in with no power, without a